Hello and welcome to episode 37 of the Bell Fall Search Focus on Talent podcast. I'm your host, Ron Laneve. Each week, we share the career stories of tech experts and marketing mavens, operational gurus, and sales leaders to illustrate how they have navigated the nonlinear career path. I met today's guest a little over 10 years ago as a candidate that was referred to me by a mutual friend. We've reconnected over the last year, and she's been an incredibly helpful advocate regarding everything AI. The foundation of her career started in the corporate environment, focused on content marketing before spending the bulk of her experience in consulting with HubSpot's first ever agency partner. At the time, it was called PR 2020. Over the last 8 years, she's been helping marketing teams in small to mid-sized businesses. And more recently, she's been focused on guiding AI adoption for those businesses as well. I'm thrilled to introduce Taylor Radey, founder at Randall Pine. Taylor, thanks a lot for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You're in Tokyo and it's 6 a.m. One, thank you for doing this so early in the day, halfway across the world. And secondly, you win the award for the furthest away individual I've ever done an interview with. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're global.
Super excited. Like I said, it's been fun to re-engage with you and get your guidance on AI. And the common theme in your background has clearly been content marketing and heavy in professional services. As I focus on nonlinear paths, it's interesting. A lot of my guests have become entrepreneurs. I'm curious, can you walk us through how you got there? What decisions did you make and when? Were they intentional? Were they serendipitous? How did you get from point A to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. I was actually a journalism major. I went to Ohio University, their Scripps School of Journalism. And at the time, they had different tracks. So you would specialize in newspaper or magazine or broadcast or something like that. They also actually had a public relations track. In addition to learning the bulk of the journalism curriculum, I had some extra classes that were focused on basically how PR professionals work with journalists and corporate communications. By the time I graduated, I was actually leaning more toward getting a job with a company in more of a corporate communications type of role. I ended up joining a steel manufacturing company in Cleveland as a marketing communications role. And so at the time, it was a great fit because it was clearly very communications and writing focused. But even in just the couple of years that I was there, it really transformed from internal communications and copywriting into a full-fledged content marketing and digital marketing type of role. That is because they hired a new CMO, our mutual friend, Steve Childs, and he is a brilliant digital marketer and came with a lot of ideas. Working with him and under his mentorship, I got a ton of experience in learning the tools and also just the strategy and tactics of running a digital marketing program. By the time I left there, I actually followed Steve because he was joining an insurtech startup. He was looking for someone to run content marketing. I was like maybe employee 3 or 4, and I was the only person actually, I think, with marketing in my title. It was a very content marketing, but also just anything marketing, digital marketing, I got to focus on and really build the program from the ground up there. After that, I started to want to get agency experience. And I knew Paul Raitzer. He's a Bobcat, so he used to come down to OU to the campus every spring for recruiting trips. He still goes there a few times a year. I had known him over the years. I had met some of the people on his team at PR 2020, and I was really impressed by them. So then I went and joined them. That was a great opportunity for me to not only get to work with different clients in different industries, with different business models, different marketing and business goals. I also got to learn about client services, account management, consulting, agency management. That gave me a much broader business knowledge. And in 2017, I started my own firm, Randall Pine. I was focused on being a digital marketing consulting firm. I have been adding more AI services since around 2020, 2021. Lots of stops along the way, somewhat intentional, but certainly a lot of good fortune as well.
What made you want to go join professional services? Given my experience, I think that was a great decision, but not everybody views that or sees that as an option. Why'd you choose that at that time?
There were a few reasons. The first was that I wanted to learn about working with different clients in different industries. It seemed like a great way to just constantly be learning about, get a broader experience with different industries and different types of businesses. I liked the idea of being surrounded by peers. Up until then, I had been working in very small marketing teams, and I was often the only person who did what I did. So the idea of being surrounded by peers that I could learn from was really exciting to me. I ended up learning so much from the people that I worked alongside. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment that I wanted to actually start my own business. Looking back, there were more signs along the way, but I definitely think around that time, I started to get a sense that I would at some point want to start my own company. I had no idea when that was going to be and what it was going to look like, but I knew that if I worked for an agency, I would get a better understanding of how to package services, how to deliver services, and how that actually worked. That ended up being a great way to do that, especially because PR 2020 was a smaller agency. And it was an agency where there wasn't a lot of specialization. Everyone was expected to do everything, to have a lot of autonomy. You did do a lot of account management and account development. In my last year there, I was the director of marketing. And so I was part of the leadership team. I was able to see the type of data we were looking at, how we made decisions about the business.
Seems like Paul did a really good job at providing operational opportunities in the business as opposed to just delivering solutions to clients along the way. Paul Raitzer, that is.
Yeah, absolutely. We generally would develop our own accounts. Again, you'd be doing sales, you'd be doing business development, you would be sending invoices, even just those kind of administrative things. Again, when I started my own firm, I had some baseline knowledge of how those types of things worked. We didn't just pass them off to some other department within the company. It gave me a lot of foundation for that as well. It helped me with technology onboarding, with change management, with digital transformation and new technology adoption.
As I was reminding myself of your background, and I remember that PR 2020 was HubSpot's first agency partner. It's interesting now how that's come full circle with everything that Dharmesh is doing with Agent AI. I've probably completed your AI course recently. Can you expand upon the AI services that Randall Pine is offering today? You provide a lot of great content out there, a lot of great methodology around how to think about it. What niche are you carving out?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm focused a lot on AI adoption, really wherever a company is along that path. We have services all along the way. So I teach 5 stages of AI adoption, or 5 steps that companies need to go through, whether that is identifying initial use cases and guided pilot projects, building a case internally if needed for budget, for buy-in, AI ops. So focusing on putting guidelines and guardrails, systems and processes in place for AI rollout to the team, creating an AI policy so we can help with those types of things, training and onboarding. So that's where a lot of my courses to help people just understand how AI works and how to apply it to their roles. Accountability, change management, and support. That is, I think, the piece that is going to be missing. That's the thing that I've learned over my career is often missing is actual follow through after the initial training and making sure that AI use is easy, it's habitual, is consistent across the team. Then AI transformation, which I don't think a lot of companies are there yet, but I think that you're going to start to see that more and more where people start thinking about if I were rebuilding my business today from the ground up with AI, how might I do it? How might it change my org chart, my services, my pricing, taking that first principles approach? That would be more of a one-on-one consulting engagement. For the rest, it would either be a direct consulting engagement with the company or do one-to-many through live in-person trainings, virtual trainings, and now some on-demand courses as well.
Sounds like it goes beyond leveraging AI for marketing or digital marketing.
A lot of times I am talking with leadership. In those cases, a lot of my early pilot projects and early adoption was with my marketing clients, it was in helping them with their marketing. But I've been expanding more and more. When I'm talking to a CEO, they're just thinking about either just was the greatest opportunity for value operationally. That might be marketing and sales are often a great place to start, but sometimes people are just looking for low hanging fruit. Maybe they're not quite ready to dive all in, and they're just looking for what are some small wins anywhere in the company where there's some sort of repetitive process. They can apply AI to really just taking a big picture look at the business and where the opportunity is.
Are there any case studies you can share from the clients you've worked with?
Yeah, of course. The first client that I've been working with, I was using originally a tool called Hyperwrite to help them with some blog post creation. This was pre ChatGPT. I had already been working with them on some early stage generative AI solutions. Once ChatGPT came out, we were looking for opportunities. The head of the department I was working with, they were looking to launch um, tons of landing pages that were focused on lots of different industries. So they wanted to create a lot of content that was fairly formulaic in nature. It was in insurance, focusing on lots of different industries. So insurance for plumbers, insurance for healthcare. So they asked, is this an opportunity where we could use AI to create that content? We identified that this was a great pilot project because it was highly repetitive, but also would have required far too much manpower to actually create. The company was running pretty lean. They couldn't create hundreds of pages manually. It just wasn't in the budget. We figured out what the process would be. I broke down the steps to create those landing pages. We identified the tools that we were going to use. We selected ChatGPT along with things like Hyperwrite and Grammarly. We were using a few AI tools for different parts of the process. I wrote the prompts that we would use and we tested that, then pulled together a team. Of course, you need the human in the loop. You need people along the way that are running the information through the prompts. They're double checking it. They're proofreading it. This was in the first half of 2023 that we did this. And we created, I think, around 150 website pages. Had they written all the content themselves or hired us, it was the equivalent of basically saving $200,000.
Wow.
I think we had a 92% decrease in the amount of time or a 12x output for what we could produce in 1 hour with AI compared to having done it the old fashioned way with writers. This is with, I think, Chat GPT 3. I think 3.5 maybe came out partway through the process. So it was an earlier form too. The writing, it wasn't as good. It could have actually been more efficient. The problem with this case study is I think that these numbers, $200,000 at 92% reduction in time, the numbers are so big that it sounds too good to be true. And I think that's part of the problem with AI is the scale and the efficiency gains can be so massive if you have prompts that work, clear processes in place, a team that has been trained on how to do this. It sounds too good to be true. In the end, we wound up saving them basically the equivalent of $200,000 and were able to get all these landing pages up and live. And they were able to test a marketing strategy that they just wouldn't have had budget for otherwise.
Two things. It's funny that even a year ago is almost outdated, considering, what you could do with Claude today or the agentic AI that's coming out so fast. It's just crazy. And two, we've talked about the economics. How do you price these types of things? You got to always think about, and this is for all of us, not just you, are we leaving money on the table? Is there some other way to generate revenue around these services? Very fascinating. Thanks for sharing.
Of course, in this case, this was a great opportunity for me to run a massive pilot project. 18 months ago, it was still pretty early for a lot of people and a lot of companies. In that case, we sold them the billable hour model worked because we were able to say, this is going to save you a ton of money and gave us the opportunity to do this project. Yeah, for professional service businesses, they're going to need to rethink their pricing strategies. They're going to need to think about value-based pricing and how they can use AI, but the pitch is not, this is deeply discounted. It's we're building you a system that's going to save you money and help you scale. And there is value in that and not basing pricing on the actual hours that the team is putting in. I think that's just going to wind up being a race to the bottom. We need to think new ways of how we're adding value in these types of relationships.
Exactly. So that's a good segue. And whether we recorded this conversation today or 3 months from now or 6 months from now, we'd be talking about some new hot thing. But today, in December of 2024, it appears that agentic AI is the hottest thing in AI, at least from my perspective, from all the reading and studying I've been doing. Are you leveraging that at this point, or what impact are you seeing with that?
I think the tricky thing with agentic AI or AI agents right now is how we define what that even is. There doesn't seem to be a lot of consensus around what an AI agent is, even among some of the top people in this space that are creating them. I personally see AI, automation, bots, AI agents used somewhat interchangeably. The lines between those terms are a little bit blurry right now. Personally, what I would think of as an AI agent would be where it is able to actually complete an action. Order me a pizza, book me a flight type of technology. When it comes to that, I don't see that right now. And even if it were available, I would not be using it for the same reason that I would not give a stranger remote access to my laptop. You don't necessarily know what programs they're able to access, what data they're viewing, what data they're storing. I don't want it booking me a non-refundable flight or ordering me 500 pizzas, like taking some action I wouldn't want. I don't think we're there yet. But there are a lot of other things that are either what I might consider automation, which is where you might string together a series of prompts or custom GPTs or API connections through something like Zapier or Make. What you're able to do is, let's say, to create a case study, you give it some basic information and it goes out, it researches the company, it feeds the information into a GPT that writes the case study that then gets emailed to you. So you're able to just set it and forget it in a sense. But it's a very linear sequence of actions that you are creating. But that's still highly valuable. There's also specialized bots, agent.ai that Dharma Shah of HubSpot created. They call them agents, and the call to action button is hire. To me, they feel a little bit like bots because they're like custom GPTs in a different wrapper. They're very structured and narrow tasks, like generate a transcript from a YouTube video, analyze a pricing page, qualify a lead. They're fairly narrow in scope. But again, I think that could be highly valuable. And you probably will eventually have a collection of these that you're working with.
Yeah, I think here they are clearly laying down the foundation to start connecting their versions of bots together, their versions of agents together to make them do more in an automated fashion. I finally got accepted into the Agent AI Builder program. So now I got to figure that out, which is another good segue. It's overwhelming how much content is available to us, and in studying and learning and reading and watching videos and trying to accelerate or be as AI efficient, that's a thing, as you can be, is tough. It's tough to focus and tough to stick to a plan. Do you have any suggestions or for individuals trying to do the same thing? And it probably wildly varies if based upon where your starting point is. I get it. So that's an unfair question, but what are your thoughts on that?
First is I personally would recommend getting some baseline level of knowledge in AI. I have a course, but there's free courses. I think it's helpful to have some sort of foundational understanding of what generative AI is, how a large language model works. It's just going to help you better understand how to use it effectively and the benefits and the risks. Especially if you're a manager, an executive, business owner, you're going to have to be making strategic decisions about AI. I think having some foundational knowledge will give you a better framework and foundation for those decisions. You probably going to miss things if you're just reading lots of one-off articles. So having some sort of structured content as a foundation, I think is really helpful. As far as keeping up with things, I actually just covered this in my newsletter a couple of weeks ago, how to keep up with AI when you're already overwhelmed. This was a topic that felt like it really resonated with me because I get it. It's a lot to keep up with. And I think the biggest thing is to be clear on what your goals are. You need to be selective. You can't follow all of it. You need to be really selective about what your main goals are so that you can filter out the news and the sources that are really relevant to you. And to have those trusted sources of information that can do some of the curation for you. Tim Ferriss talked about this in his 4-Hour Workweek book. He talks about this kind of selective media diet where the goal is to not follow everything, but to follow the things that matter. You can choose people that you trust that are going to tell you, separate the signal from the noise and help you understand what really matters and what to focus on. The last thing I would say is I actually think that it can be simpler than people make it. A lot of what I teach is focused on work. It is not focused on tools because I actually think that there's a ton of value that you can get out of those frontier large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. It is so easy to get distracted and to try out new tools and capabilities rather than thinking about, oh, that's a cool tool. How could I use it? I recommend that people look at your day-to-day work that you have to get done and then figuring out how you can apply the right tools to continually, like you're saying, become more efficient and continually upgrade and up-level that work. I think that makes it a little bit less overwhelming and more concrete and certainly more practical. You'll get more value out of it in the short term.
I love that last point. I've signed up for every newsletter under the sun to read daily and weekly updates in AI, which they're good. Then at the end, I'm just like, here's the latest tools. I start clicking through each one. I'm like, oh, that one's cool. That one's cool. And then I'm down a rabbit hole. Then it's over. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I can leverage, to your point, Claude or ChatGPT to do what I need to do and don't get lost on all these other things. Obvious point, but hard to focus on. So love that point.
I think that it's hard. It is valuable to keep an ear out, keep an eye out for what's possible. Because I think some of this is you don't even realize what's possible until you see some of these tools. That can open up some new ideas of things that you hadn't thought about. I think in general, it's better to start with the work itself. I also really think that for especially executives and business owners and entrepreneurs who want to be entrepreneurs, I think focus is going to be a competitive advantage in the future. That has always been true, but I think as we see just these cycles of technology just moving faster and faster, there's going to be so much distraction. There's going to be so many shiny objects. And the default will be to get distracted. So if you're able to focus, you're going to be ahead of the competition because you're focused on your goal and applying the right technology to your strategy.
Yep. Great advice. All right, let's switch gears. I want to talk about an area that's near and dear to me is our next generation of business people, emerging college graduates, people entering the work world here shortly. Big question, my overarching question is, what suggestions would you give to them on where to focus their time and energy in either classes or subject matter, or how to approach and get ready for the transition into the work world? Things are changing faster than I've ever seen. I never thought a year ago that a software developer would be out of work ever. And in this year, I've seen a lot of people out of work, and I've seen AI start to chip away at roles, really. Marketing and even content development and creative work starts to worry me a little bit. I don't want to be too cynical, but I am worried about it. So what are your thoughts? And answer that any way you like.
Yeah, of course. I was actually speaking with high school seniors last week, and we were talking about this exact thing because they were asking, what should I major in? Will my employer even care about my degree? Are we going to need to work? Is AI going to take jobs? We were talking about all of this, and they already in high school were seeing the problems that they were going to have. I told them, I dated myself and said, when I graduated from college, Twitter was brand new, the iPhone was brand new, Instagram didn't exist yet. There's even in the span of my career, there's been so much change. And I said to them that there are probably jobs that they're going to have in their careers that just don't exist today. Advice for really anyone in any stage of their career is to learn more about AI, which is just baseline advice, because I think that right now it's a really good way to differentiate yourself. But I think in a not so distant future, it's going to be a prerequisite for a lot of jobs. I think that the way that you use AI depends on where you are in your career. So I asked them if they had used ChatGPT, and 100% of the hands went up. Meanwhile, I asked them if they owned a PlayStation, and 40% of the hands went up. So more of them have used ChatGPT than own this gaming console, which did
Yeah.
surprise me. I said, that's great. You're learning about it. You're experimenting with it. But I also really cautioned them not to use it as a crutch. There's no shortcut to becoming an expert, at least so far. It seems that 10,000 hours, you have to put in the hard work, and you just won't get there if you turn to ChatGPT every time you don't know something and every time that approach something hard. I think it'd be a really hard line to walk for a lot of young professionals and college grads, because it's going to be so easy to just lean on ChatGPT. But I think you need to learn how to use these tools and also become an expert in some domain. So why does expertise matter? And that kind of gets to my advice for people later in their careers who maybe have 10 or 15 or 20 or more years of experience, is they have an opportunity to meld their experience and expertise with AI. They essentially have an opportunity to scale their experience and expertise. Now, sure, a young recent grad is going to be able to get a pretty good answer, produce something pretty good with AI. But someone with more experience is going to be able to write better prompts because they have better context of the industry, the company, the role, the project. They're going to be able to better assess the outputs because, again, they've done the work. They might make connections that a younger professional might not make. ChatGPT, your AI might be able to create you a blueprint, but are you really going to start construction on that house without a professional who's going to assess whether it is structurally sound? We still are going to need those people to double check things. They're going to be able to write better prompts, better assess the outputs, and they're going to know what to do with that information in the real world. I think being mediocre, to be honest, is going to get a lot harder. But if you work really hard and you become an expert in a specific domain, that can actually be incredibly valuable. If you're job hunting, I think the narrative is go to the job opening and scroll down to the requirements and pick one of those responsibilities and figure out how you could build a custom GPT to make that task more efficient. I don't think that you should be afraid of this idea that, oh, AI could just do this job. I think the way that you sell it is, I can be so much more efficient in this role because I know AI. And also, I have the experience and the expertise and the domain knowledge to be more effective in this role. You can bring those two things together to be a supercharged version of the job candidate that people are looking for.
Have you seen Chris Penn's latest video series on job hunting and putting together common general?
I was actually going to suggest it, but then I saw you commented. And so, okay, you've seen this because, yeah, he is just brilliant and really seems to just put so much value out there for free, which is really nice. I saw that he did that as a holiday thing to help job hunters. And I haven't looked closely at it, but I'm sure, knowing him, that it's great and an extremely great resource for anyone who is job hunting right now. Use it to make yourself a compelling candidate, but then probably turn around in your interviews, be able to speak to the ways that you can use AI.
It was great for the job hunting process, but there was a bunch of what I would call indirect learnings related to just how to use ChatGPT more efficiently, or how to better write a prompt to get what you want, or the whole concept of a scoring rubric. It was interesting. His video is great. I know you published a post recently around the top people you follow in AI. I think a few of them we share: Ethan Mollick, Chris Penn, Paul Reitzer, Mike Kaput. I would include you in that list, on my list. Can you refresh my memory? Who else would you suggest that people watching this should follow as well?
Yeah. So Paul and Mike, the artificial intelligence show, I think, is the new name of the podcast. That is a great source for the keeping up with the weekly kind of onslaught of news. Ethan Mollick is great for a lot of like research, especially because he is actually collecting, real data on a lot of these tools and gets early access. Allie Miller, she came from Amazon She's constantly putting stuff out and creating free content. Chris Penn and Trust Insights, again, tons of great insight. And also, he seems to really have a deep knowledge of how the models work. So he can provide a better context around why things do what they do. He can explain at a more fundamental level how these systems work and therefore why these different strategies are more effective. I follow some other people that are more to get ideas for use cases. But as far as really broad knowledge, I look for people, and I outlined recently my criteria is I really look for people who have real experience, who provide real insight, but beyond just repeating headlines. There's enough headlines out there already. And I want them to have a distinct point of view on AI because I follow a lot of other people, but I see a lot of the same things. And I think from that list, what you get is people who have a distinct point of view about how you should apply AI or what it's going to mean for work. I think that's really valuable too, to make sure that you're getting different perspectives. You're getting someone who's really thinking deeply beyond just the surface level. Here's this new tool of the week. Here's this new use case I tried, and really drilling into those kind of bigger picture questions, but then making it extremely practical and applicable in my everyday life and work.
Yep. Perfect. Taylor, thanks again. It's a pleasure chatting with you, and look forward to continuing to follow all your success. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.